The first 6 videos in this series have explored the implications of the first verse in the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This verse describes God creating everything out of nothing. The first 2 videos in the series discuss how Genesis 1:1 separates Judaism and Christianity from every other religion and ideology, and how it provides the basis for intrinsic identity, meaning, and purpose. The next 2 videos demonstrate how Genesis 1:1 provides the basis for Christian theology. The 5th video goes through the history of Big Bang cosmology, showing how we concluded that all matter, time, space, and energy were created out of nothing in a hot, dense singularity that has been expanding and cooling since. And the last video shows how current Big Bang cosmology matches perfectly with the biblical description of the beginning. Now, if you haven't watched the previous 6 videos, it would benefit you to stop this one now, go back to the playlist, and watch them for background information and context. Many skeptics today insist that scientific evidence for the beginning of the universe is not evidence for God. The point of this video is that history demonstrates the exact opposite. Evidence for a beginning was viewed as having major theological implications and was taken as an indication that something supernatural caused the universe. For example, the second law of thermodynamics indicates that the universe will end in thermal heat death. A universe which has an end is not eternal. In addition, evidence pointing to a beginning to the universe implies the existence of a beginner. Now, George Lemaitre's idea that the beginning of space and time originated in a super-dense primeval atom, which marked the beginning of space and time, was initially ridiculed because of its theistic implications. Even though it was Einstein's general relativity that gave Lemaitre the idea, Einstein resisted a beginning to the universe because it smacked too much of creation. English astronomer Fred Hoyle launched a media campaign to discredit Lemaitre and made up the phrase Big Bang to poke fun at the theory. Prejudice against the theistic implications of a beginning of the universe actually held science back and kept the idea essentially shelved until the discovery of the cosmic microwave background radiation in 1964 made it impossible to ignore. Michel-Yves Bolloré and Olivier Bonnassy, in their book God, the Science, the Evidence, relate the extreme actions taken by those in power who viewed the scientific evidence for a beginning of the universe as a threat to their materialistic agenda. Evidence for a beginning undermined the doctrines of 2 major materialist ideologies of the time, Nazism and Marxism. Lenin subscribed to dialectical materialism, which holds that the universe is static, eternal, and without beginning. Lenin often explained that if matter were not eternal, people would think that it was created by a transcendent cause that some called God. For Lenin and Stalin, reality existed in matter alone and not in any other dimension. There was no room for the supernatural or religion. In Germany, glacial cosmogony became the official doctrine of the Third Reich. Glacial cosmogony taught that the universe has existed for eternity as a beginningless and endless rule of what was called the eternal ice. Ice was the basic substance of all cosmic processes, and that ice moons, ice planets, and the global ether, also made of ice, had determined the entire development of the universe. Nazi cosmology envisioned an eternal cyclical struggle of fire against cold, in which ice comes out the victor each time. A superior race of giants with blonde hair and blue eyes, representing the seeds of a new humanity, emerged victorious from the heart of this cosmic ice. So for Hitler, the universe had to be eternal. This was the only way the Germanic race could appeal to an eternal destiny. If the universe wasn't eternal, then the fate of mankind was in the hands of something greater than itself. Any evidence in support of a non-eternal universe had to be silenced. In 1922, Soviet scientist Alexander Friedmann, along with Jacob Tamarkin and Yuri Krutov, showed that Einstein's general relativity led naturally to a dynamic universe that began within a point of zero volume. This meant that the universe had not existed forever, and was not static. The Soviet government had to end this myth of creation and tried to silence or eliminate any scientist vaguely suspected of violating their materialist doctrine. Stalin was systematically burning and destroying monasteries and churches with the goal to remove God completely from the Soviet Union. Any scientific evidence for a beginning to the universe was viewed as leaving room for God. Stalin knew the obvious implication from the evidence. To achieve his goal of removing God, he had to make sure any evidence for the beginning of the universe was quashed. In the winter of 1923, efforts were taken to silence Friedman, who abruptly died in September of 1924 at the age of 37, reportedly from typhoid fever. Those closest to Friedman insist that he was the victim of a government conspiracy. His research partner, Jacob Tamarkin, fled the USSR because of it. In Soviet Russia, most scientists who believed in the Big Bang suffered physically for spreading a revolutionary theory that challenged the eternity of matter. The same thing happened in Nazi Germany. In 1922, Einstein started receiving death threats even before he agreed that the universe had a beginning. Hitler found the suggestion that matter is perishable disgusting, and from the 1930s on, Hitler rejected any idea of an immaterial God outside of nature. Matter was eternal, and any attempt to silence or to question this principle should be, quote, killed in the cradle. Now, Einstein was harshly criticized for his general relativity theory, which opened the door to a non-eternal universe. And Einstein was forced to defend his ideas against streams of vicious attacks from the German scientific community. He eventually was kicked out of the university with the claim that his erroneous teaching had perverted the German people. A bounty was put on Einstein's head in January of 1933, and all traces of general relativity or a beginning to the universe was removed from science in Germany. Einstein had to flee to the United States. So on the screen now are some of the scientists who were persecuted for their work on the evidence demonstrating the beginning of the universe. Resistance to the evidence that pointed to the beginning of the universe was not limited to the Soviet Union and Germany. There was resistance in the United States and in the United Kingdom as well, for the same reason that a beginner implied a creator. Here are some quotes from American and British scientists from around the time that the evidence for the Big Bang was showing up. American theoretical physicist David Bohm said, "The partisans of the Big Bang effectively turn traitor to science and distort the scientific facts to reach conclusions that are convenient to the Catholic Church." British physicist William Bonner, referring to the proponents of a beginning to the universe, said, "The underlying motive is to bring God in as the creator." And Sir Arthur Eddington, evaluating the evidence for the beginning of the universe, admitted that philosophically, the notion of a beginning of the present order of nature is repugnant to me. Well, why would it be repugnant? Because it pointed to a supernatural cause of our universe. The persecution of Big Bang supporters is telling. It reveals how strong and dangerous this evidence for a beginning to the universe was considered. The outrage was proportionate to the danger the Big Bang posed to the fundamental beliefs of those regimes that didn't want a Judeo-Christian God to exist. The materialists would not have unleashed such extreme violence upon scientists who theorized the expansion of the universe and the Big Bang had they not been convinced that these theories made a strong case for the existence of God. The use of force to silence anyone teaching about heat death or the beginning of the universe is an admission of the theistic implications of the evidence. Many skeptics today insist that evidence for the beginning of the universe is not evidence for God. History demonstrates, however, that evidence for a beginning of the universe was taken as an indicator that something supernatural caused the universe. The science which demonstrates a beginning to the universe has major theological implications and is evidence for the existence of God.